The meeting room was full, but the air felt thin as soon as my eyes met his. It couldn't be true. I blinked once, then again, trying to convince myself it was just a hallucination caused by the stress of the new project. But no, he was there. In flesh, bone, and arrogance, leaning against the table with his arms crossed, a half smirk on his lips as if he were enjoying my reaction. The meeting continued in the background, voices discussing deadlines, objectives, goals. I should have been paying attention, but all I could feel was the growing heat in my chest and the familiar anger bubbling beneath the surface. Is there a problem? His voice reached me before I could even organize my thoughts. The tone carried that subtle irony, the same one I had known for years, the same one that drove me crazy, Ethan Carter, the guy who, at some point between adolescence and adulthood, had become my biggest headache. The guy I never expected to see again. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to regain my composure. No, Carter, just surprise. I didn't know they hired inflated egos as part of the team. He laughed. That low, indulgent sound I hated because, somehow, it always seemed like an invitation to a game I didn't want to play. And I didn't know they hired people who hold grudges as a hobby, he shot back, leaning slightly forward. My eyes narrowed. He knew exactly what he was doing. Testing my limits, poking old wounds. But not this time. I wasn't going to fall for his provocation, so I took a deep breath, stretched a professional smile, and turned to the team. Let's focus on the project, shall we? My voice was firm, but deep down, I knew my self-control was hanging by a thread. Unfortunately, fate seemed to enjoy having fun at my expense, because the next sentence I heard from the project manager was a direct hit. Claire, you and Ethan will work together to lead this initiative. We're counting on your synergy to ensure everything goes as planned. What? My gaze cut through his in an instant. And it was there, in the glint of suppressed amusement in Ethan's eyes, that I realized. He knew. And worse, he was loving it. The room was crowded, but I felt suffocated by a single look. Ethan. He was there, surrounded by coworkers and casual laughter, holding a glass of whiskey as if he belonged to that environment with an irritating ease. As if nothing between us had ever existed. As if the past were a blank page. But I remembered. And each relaxed laugh from him made my chest tighten. You're staring, Claire. The voice of Sophie, my colleague and friend, sounded amused beside me. I immediately averted my gaze, bringing my wine glass to my lips to disguise it. I'm just assessing the enemy, I murmured. Sophie chuckled. If you didn't tell me that with that, I'm going to kill or kiss face, I might even believe you. I shot her a warning look, but she merely raised her hands in surrender. All right, but you two really have this thing. There's no thing. But there was. A strange, unwanted tension, an invisible thread pulling us to orbit around each other, even against my will. And as if the universe enjoyed torturing me, it was exactly at that moment that the boss's voice echoed through the hall. A toast to our new project, may it be a success. Everyone raised their glasses, and I forced myself to do the same. But before I could drink, a deep, familiar voice sounded too close. I thought you were going to run away from me all night. I closed my eyes for a second before turning my face to confront him. Ethan was beside me, whiskey glass still in hand, the same half smirk on his lips as always. The world doesn't revolve around you, Carter. I was just busy. He tilted his head slightly, studying me with those eyes that seemed to see through any mask I tried to put on. Busy hating me? My jaw clenched. If that helps you sleep at night? No, he replied, and his tone dropped a bit, almost serious. But I think you sleep worse than I do. My chest tightened, and my instinct screamed to run from that conversation. But then, as if he wanted to keep me from escaping, he dropped the bomb. You still don't know the whole truth, Claire. My fingers tightened around the glass. What the hell are you talking about? He hesitated for a moment as if weighing his words, but then just shook his head. Forget it. It's not time yet. Not time yet? My anger surged in an instant. You mean to say that, after everything that happened, after what you did, there's still something I don't know? He held my gaze, and for the first time, there was no arrogance there. Just something that felt like regret? Yes. My heart raced. Because, for the first time in years, a doubt arose in my chest. And worse than the anger, worse than the contempt, was the possibility that maybe I had spent too much time hating the wrong person. Working under pressure had never been a problem for me. In fact, I usually thrived under stress. But working under pressure alongside Ethan Carter? That was another story. The conference room was in absolute silence, except for the sound of his fingers tapping idly on the table as we reviewed the final adjustments of the presentation. We were sitting across from each other, surrounded by colleagues and superiors waiting for our pitch. And I hated to admit it, but Ethan was good. Irritatingly good. He spoke with confidence, knew every detail of the project, and worse, anticipated problems before they even arose. I wanted to find some flaw, any slip that proved he wasn't as perfect as he thought he was. But he didn't give me that chance. Claire, do you want to add anything to this part? His voice pulled me out of my reverie. I lifted my gaze and found those dark brown eyes fixed on me. There was a challenge there, but also something more. Something that irritated me because it made me feel exposed. Yes, I straightened my posture, keeping my voice steady. As Ethan mentioned, the strategy needs adjustments to ensure that deadlines are met without compromising quality. Our proposal is to optimize internal processes and redistribute tasks more efficiently. I don't look away. Neither does he. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable for anyone else in the room, only for me. Because there was something in the way he looked at me that made my heart race more than it should have. "Great point," said one of the directors, nodding in approval. "The dynamic between you two is working well. It's as if you've known each other for years." My stomach churned. If only he knew. Ethan smirked, and I recognized the amusement on his face even before he said anything. In a way, we do know each other. My entire body tensed. He was enjoying this, the irony of the situation. But it wasn't just his game that bothered me. It was the fact that, despite everything, he understood me. Annoyingly well. And then it happened. In the middle of the meeting, as I leaned over to pass a document, my hand accidentally brushed against his. It was a second, a brief touch. But it felt like a shock. My eyes shot to his, and in that instant I realized he had felt it too. The tension that had always existed between us was never just anger. It was never just competition. There was something more. Something I wasn't ready to face. And judging by the way he was looking at me now, Ethan knew that better than anyone. I had a plan. Do my job, ignore Ethan Carter, and move on with my life without letting him back in. But, as always, the universe seemed to enjoy challenging my sanity. "You and Ethan will need to visit the client in person tomorrow," announced the boss casually, as if he weren't throwing gasoline on the fire of my personal hell. I blinked. "Sorry, what?" "It's important for the project leadership to be there. You'll need to spend a few hours reviewing the adjustments." Hours. Hours next to Ethan, with no one to soften the tension or interrupt our sharp barbs. "No problem," Ethan replied before I could protest. I shot him a furious look, which of course only made him smile to the side, as if this trip were a gift from the heavens. Idiot. The next day, the situation got even worse when I found out that the client's office was 2 hours away and that we would be going together in the same car. Because obviously, I must have done something very wrong in another life. Most of the trip was in silence. I was determined to keep things professional. But Ethan drove with one hand on the wheel, the other casually resting on the gear shift, his shirt sleeves rolled up to his forearms, and an air of someone who didn't mind at all the palpable tension inside the car. "Are you going to be quiet the whole way?" he asked, not taking his eyes off the road. I crossed my arms. "I'm enjoying the silence." He chuckled softly. "Funny, I never imagined you were someone who shied away from a discussion. Maybe I just learned to pick my battles." He shot a quick glance in my direction, and one corner of his mouth lifted. "Or maybe you're afraid of what might happen if you spend too much time with me." I rolled my eyes. "You think you're irresistible, don't you?" "I think you still haven't decided if you hate me or if you enjoy hating me." My heart did a strange leap in my chest, but I refused to let that show. "Don't flatter yourself, Carter. If it were up to me, this trip wouldn't be happening." He didn't reply immediately, but his smile faded slightly, becoming more contemplative. "I know," he said simply. And for some reason, that destabilized me more than any tease. The meeting was a success, despite our complicated dynamic. But the return was a disaster. A storm suddenly erupted, catching everyone off guard. Traffic became chaotic, and before we knew it, we were stuck on the road, with little visibility and rain pounding against the car windows. "Great," I murmured, crossing my arms. Ethan sighed, turning off the engine. "Looks like we're going to have to wait a bit." I didn't want to be there. But more than that, I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. Because now there were no distractions. Just the two of us and a silence thick with unspoken things. He leaned back in his seat and turned to look at me. "You know, sometimes I wonder—" "What?" I asked, even though I didn't want to. "If at any moment you've really seen me?" I tensed. "What are you talking about?" He turned his gaze to the rain hitting the glass. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "You've always seen me as the enemy, Claire. As someone who just wanted to annoy you, compete with you, challenge you." "Because that's exactly what you did," I retorted. He let out a humorless laugh. Was it really just that? My breath caught in my throat. I had always seen Ethan Carter as a problem to avoid. As someone in my life just to get on my nerves. But for the first time, I wondered if I had stopped seeing something. And what was worse? If deep down I had always known. The dinner wasn't planned. After hours stuck in traffic because of the storm, the least we could do was stop at a roadside restaurant to grab something to eat before continuing the trip. "I can't believe I'm having dinner with you," I murmured as I settled at the table. Ethan smiled, adjusting himself in the seat across from me. "Don't make this bigger than it is, Claire. I'd also prefer to be anywhere else." My gaze narrowed. "You really can't go 5 minutes without provoking me, can you?" He tilted his head slightly, studying me with an interest that irritated me. "I like seeing you irritated. You become intense." I crossed my arms, refusing to give him any reaction that could feed that unbearable ego. The waiter brought our drinks, and the silence that followed should have been comfortable. But it wasn't. It was electric. My attention was drawn to Ethan's hands, which were absently spinning the whiskey glass. He did this whenever he was lost in thought, something I knew because, despite hating him, I knew him. And suddenly, I found myself thinking about something that should never have crossed my mind. Ethan Carter had always been handsome. Not in an obvious way, but in a way that becomes dangerous when you look too long. I swallowed hard and looked away. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, and his voice came out softer than I expected. My heart raced. "Nothing. Liar." I raised my eyes to meet his and saw something different there. Something that wasn't teasing or provocation. It was intensity. He leaned a little more over the table, and I felt the air between us grow heavier. "Tell me something," he murmured. "Do you really still hate me?" The question caught me off guard. Because the answer should have been simple. Yes, of course. But the words got stuck in my throat. Ethan noticed and smiled. I knew it. I leaned forward, narrowing my eyes. "You don't know anything, Carter. I know you're looking at me differently. I know that no matter how hard you try, you can't ignore me." My breath faltered. "You're delusional." He chuckled softly. "Then let's play a game." I crossed my arms. "What kind of game?" He slid the whiskey glass between his fingers without taking his eyes off me. "A challenge. If you can go the next 5 minutes without looking away from me, without escaping the tension between us, I'll never bring this up again." My mouth opened and closed a few times. "That's ridiculous. Are you afraid of losing?" My blood boiled. "Why the hell would I play that?" He smiled to the side. "Because you want to know what happens if you don't lose." My heart took a painful leap. Because deep down, he was right. I wanted to know. And that was exactly what terrified me. I tried to pretend that nothing happened that night, that Ethan's gaze didn't haunt me, that the tension between us didn't cross the line of safety, that I didn't spend the following days wondering what would have happened if I hadn't gotten up and ended the game early. But I knew the truth. And the worst part? He knew it too. Now back to the routine. Everything felt different. We didn't talk about it, but it was there. In the prolonged glances, in the accidental touches, in the way I sensed his presence before even seeing him. And as if the confusion in my head wasn't enough, someone from my past decided to reappear. Claire? The sound of his voice made my stomach churn. I turned slowly and came face to face with Nathan. Nathan, my ex-boyfriend. The guy I thought would be my future until I realized he was more in love with his own ambition than with me. He smiled, that charming and rehearsed way he always did when he wanted something. Long time no see. You look amazing. I crossed my arms. What are you doing here? Meeting with the executive team. Looks like I'll be working closer to your department. Great, because my life wasn't complicated enough already. Nathan stepped a little closer, and my first reaction was to back away. And then I felt it. A presence behind me. Firm, warm, familiar. Ethan, is there a problem here? His voice came low but laden with a warning tone. Nathan raised his eyebrows and gave a half smile. Oh, Carter, I didn't know you and Claire were close. Ethan didn't respond. He just looked at him in a way that made the air in the room feel heavier. Nathan looked from me to him, seeming to enjoy what he saw. Well, Claire, I hope we can catch up. See you around. He left, and the silence between me and Ethan became unbearable. Then, without looking at me, he said, "That guy? Is he the reason you hate me so much?" My breath faltered, because out of all the things Ethan could have said, that was the last thing I expected. I swallowed hard. I don't want to talk about it. What a surprise, he murmured ironically. You never do. Something inside me snapped. And why do you care so much? He stepped closer. Too close. Because I know there's something you're not seeing. And I'm beginning to think it has to do with him. My throat dried. What exactly are you implying? Ethan hesitated for a second before speaking, and his dark eyes shone with something between anger and frustration. That maybe I'm not the villain in your story, Claire. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to. But for the first time, I couldn't. Because deep down, a part of me was starting to wonder if he was right. The rain fell mercilessly, soaking the city in a swirl of blurred lights and distant thunder. I should have been home, safe and away from anything that made me doubt the certainties I had carried for years. But instead, I was here. With him. You didn't have to follow me here, I said, crossing my arms, trying to ignore the fact that Ethan was standing in front of me, in the middle of the street, with tense shoulders and a sharp gaze fixed on me. And you didn't have to run away. He shot back, voice low, laden with something that made my stomach churn. I rolled my eyes. I didn't run away. I just don't want to have this conversation right now. Now or never, Claire. My breath hitched. The storm roared around us, but nothing felt more intense than the invisible pressure between us. He was just a few steps away, each raindrop tracing paths on his skin, each second amplifying the suffocating tension between us. You still think I'm the guilty one, don't you? His voice came lower now, but somehow even firmer. That I was the one who betrayed you. My heart jolted. Ethan, please. No, Claire. You spent years hating me without even bothering to ask what really happened. I tensed. I know what happened. He laughed, a bitter laugh. Do you? Or do you just believe what was most convenient to believe? I swallowed hard, every fiber of my body begging to get out of there, to not hear, to keep sustaining my contempt like armor. Because if I accepted that I might be wrong, what would be left? But then Ethan took a step forward. Then another. And before I knew it, he was too close. His dark eyes held mine like a storm of their own. Something fierce, dangerous, and inevitable. You hate me, don't you? He whispered, and my skin prickled, even under the rain. I opened my mouth, but no response came. Say you hate me. That you hate me so much you can't even think of me without feeling anger. My breath got caught in my throat. Because I wanted to say it. I needed to say it. But the words wouldn't come. And then he did what I didn't expect. He kissed me. It was strong, hot, intense in a way that felt like it was exploding inside, as if years of tension had finally broken all the barriers between us. His hands held my face as if he wanted to make sure I was there, that I felt it as much as he did. And damn, I felt it. My fingers clutched his shirt, as if I were drowning and he was the only solid thing around me. As if for a moment, all the anger and desire were the same thing. But then the fear came, the panic. And before I could think, I pushed him away. My breath was ragged, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Ethan looked at me, not with anger nor frustration, but with something worse, with certainty. "You can run away again, Claire," he said, his voice hoarse and loaded with something I couldn't name. "But you know this doesn't end here." My chest tightened, because deep down, I knew. Pretending nothing happened. That was what I had decided to do. And for 2 whole days, I clung to that decision as if my life depended on it. Work, coffee, meetings, answering emails, avoiding Ethan Carter at all costs. But the problem with pretending nothing happened is that it only works if the other person is also willing to play the same game. And Ethan? Ethan never played by the rules. Ignoring the problem doesn't make it disappear, Claire. His voice sounded behind me before I could even reach it. The door. Damn. I closed my eyes for a second before slowly turning around. There he was, leaning against the doorframe of my office, arms crossed over his chest. That damn unreadable look studying me as if he knew exactly the chaos he had left inside me. "I'm not ignoring anything," I shot back, keeping my voice steady. He raised an eyebrow. "No? Then tell me why you ran away that night." I crossed my arms, feeling the tension spread across my shoulders. "Because it was a mistake." Ethan was silent for a moment, and that's what made me stare at him. Because if there's one thing he never was, it was silent. But when I looked at him, there was no amusement, no irony, no anger, just something more intense, more profound. "A mistake?" he repeated softly. "Is that what you think?" I swallowed hard. What else could it be? He let out a short, humorless laugh, running his tongue over his lips as if he were trying to hold something inside. And then he took a step forward, then another, and suddenly, he was there. Close. So close that my skin prickled before he even spoke. "You have 2 options, Claire," he said quietly, but with a firmness that made my chest tighten. My breath faltered. "What are they?" He slowly raised his hand, as if to touch my face, but stopped at the last second, as if he were giving me the chance to run away. "Push me away for good," he murmured. "Look me in the eyes and tell me you feel nothing. That kiss meant nothing." I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come out. Because deep down, it would be a lie. And Ethan Carter knew that. He took another step closer, and now I could smell him, feel his presence, the electric energy that had always existed between us. "Or," he continued, "you can stop running and admit that this is real." My fingers clenched at my sides. "And if I can't choose either?" He smiled slightly, but there was no challenge in it. "Then deep down, you've already chosen." And it was at that moment that I realized I didn't need to choose. Because my body had made that choice for me a long time ago. I was suffocating. And it wasn't from lack of air. It was because of him. Because of everything Ethan Carter represented and what he did to me without even trying. The worst part? He knew. And that's why he didn't back down. He didn't let me pretend nothing was happening. After that conversation, after that silent ultimatum, I did what I always did. I ran. I spent the last few days buried in work, avoiding any situation that would force me to face him again. But no matter where I went, he was there, in the next room, in the hallway, in my thoughts when I closed my eyes at night. Until the following afternoon, Sophie appeared at my desk with a look I knew all too well. "What's wrong?" I asked impatiently. She sat in the chair in front of me, crossing her arms. "You're going to tell me what's going on between you and Ethan, or do I need to pry it out of you?" My body tensed. "Nothing is happening." Sophie scoffed. "Claire, for God's sake. Even those who have never exchanged a word with you two notice that something is happening." I stayed silent, because it was true. And then came the question I didn't want to hear. Do you like him? I felt a knot form in my throat. I tried to say, but my own mind wouldn't let me. Claire, Sophie leaned forward, her tone softer now. You know you care about him. You always have. I shook my head, feeling panic rise through my skin. I don't know how. She waited. I closed my eyes for a second, and when I spoke, my voice came out quieter than I would have liked. I spent so long hating Ethan that I don't know how to feel anything else. There was silence. Then Sophie sighed. Then maybe it's time to learn. My chest tightened, because deep down, I knew she was right. Now the only question was there still time? And more importantly, would I have the courage? I never liked admitting I was wrong. But there I was, back at the point where it all began, facing Ethan Carter as if my whole life had dragged me to this moment. The office was empty at that hour of the night, just the two of us, wrapped in a silence heavy with everything that hadn't been said. He stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at me with that exasperated patience, as if he knew I was about to crumble. And maybe he did. I took a deep breath. I spent so much time hating you, Ethan. His face didn't change, but something in his eyes lit up. I know. I swallowed hard. I spent so long convincing myself that you were the villain of my story, that if I hated you enough, the past wouldn't affect me. I laughed without humor, looking at the ground. But the truth is, no matter how hard I tried, I could never really hate you. Silence. I looked up and found his eyes fixed on me. This time, no challenge. No provocation. Just certainty. He took a step forward, then another, until he was close enough for me to feel his breath against my skin. I never wanted to be your enemy, Claire. My chest tightened. I know. A muscle moved in his jaw. So what do you want now? I swallowed hard. My fingers clenched at my sides, trying to contain the trembling. Because that was the question that mattered. What did I want? The answer came before I could even fight it. I wanted him. I always had. I took a deep breath, gathering the courage that had been hidden inside me for years. Then, without thinking anymore, without running away, without fear, I kissed him. And it was different this time. There was no anger. There were no barriers. Just surrender. His arms wrapped around me as if they knew exactly where they belonged, and I held onto him as if he were the only solid thing in the world. Because maybe he was. Because maybe he always had been. And in the end, Ethan Carter didn't need to steal my heart. I gave it willingly. If someone had told me months ago that I would end up here, in Ethan Carter's arms, I would have laughed in that person's face. If someone had told me that the guy I spent years hating or thinking I hated would be the one to make my heart race like this, I would have called it madness. But now I knew the truth. Love and hate are made of the same stuff. The same intensity, the same strength. The difference? The direction we point that feeling. And in the end, all I did was realize that mine had always pointed to him. Maybe from the beginning. Maybe forever. So what would you do in Claire's place? Do you think you would have realized sooner that hate was just an excuse to hide what she really felt? Comment here what you thought of the story, and if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.